All right. Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining today's session. My name is Jeremy Tan, and I'm a program manager with the Microsoft Sentinel engineering team. Today, I'll be presenting with my colleagues, Ron Marsiano. Ron?
Hi, everyone. Pleasure to be here and see how many have joined our session. And my name is Ron Marsiano, like I said before, and I'm the product manager leading analytics in Microsoft Sentinel.
In this webinar, we'll discuss Microsoft Sentinel analytics capabilities to help the SOC team detect threats, minimize false positive alerts, and make your threat detections response faster and smarter. Here's the agenda for today. We'll begin with an overview of Microsoft Sentinel analytics, where you'll learn what are the rules types available out of the box and the workflow visualization for scheduled rules. This is to cover the fundamentals of analytics. Then we'll discuss how to gain more contextuals and information for threat huntings, investigations, and respond with alert enrichment. After that, we'll be focusing on some of the newer features, such as NRT or near real-time rules, which allows you to shorten the threat detection time. Next, we'll explore detection tuning features, which provides you with actionable recommendations and insights that can significantly lower your tuning overhead and allow you to focus on detecting and responding to actual threats. After that, we'll help you to understand your organization's security coverage with MITRE integration based on the tactics and techniques from the MITRE ATT&CK framework. Lastly, we'll go through some of the best practices for creating analytics rules, so make sure you stay tuned until the end of the session. Now let's get started with analytics overview. There are 7 rule types available in Microsoft Sentinel. We have summarized each of them with high-level information and learning resources. Therefore, we'll only go through them briefly instead of deep dive into each of them for the interest of time. Keep in mind that we'll only be focusing on schedule and NRT rules in this webinar. Now, let's quickly walk through all the rule types available in Microsoft Sentinel. First, we have the Microsoft security rules. This allows users to automatically create incidents from the alerts generated in other Microsoft security solutions, such as MVE or MCAS in real time. It supports rule logic customizations, such as filter by alert severity, or only create from alerts that contain specific text in the alert name. Besides that, do take note that there's Microsoft 365 Defender connector, which allows you to stream all Microsoft 365 Defender incidents into Microsoft Sentinel and provides bidirectional syncs between both portals. Next is Fusion. Now, Fusion rule is enabled by default, and it is a correlation engine based on scalable machine learning algorithms. It detects multi-stage attacks by identifying combinations of anomalous behaviors and suspicious activities. It correlates multiple low fidelity signals from various data sources and produce high fatalities and high severity alerts. Machine learning behavioral analytics. These templates are based on proprietary machine learning algorithms. They are good for detecting anomalous behavior, such as unusual remote desktop or SSH logon. Threat intelligent matching analytics. The rule matches Microsoft generated threat intelligence data via logs and generates high fidelity alerts or incidents with appropriate severity based on the context of the logs. Once a match is generated, the indicator is published to your threat intelligence repository in Microsoft Sentinel. Next is anomaly. Anomaly rules are powered by machine learning to identify unusual behavior. This rule won't generate alerts or incidents, as anomalies don't necessarily indicate malicious or even suspicious behavior by themselves. They provide signals we store in anomaly table so that can be used to improve detections, investigations, and threat huntings. These anomaly rules can also be tuned for specific environment. As for schedule rules, there are more than 400 out-of-the-box templates available. These rule templates are customizable and based on KQL. And you can create custom analytics rules to help discover threats and anomalous behavior in your environment. Lastly, NRT provides up to the minute detection out of the box. This type of the rules was designed to be highly responsive by running at 1 minute interval. We'll see a demo of NRT in the later part of this session. Let's now look at the alert workflow part because they determine how Microsoft Sentinel rules behave. We will focus on the schedule analytics rule as this is the rule type that most users will create. Let's examine how you move from an initiating event all the way to an incident. In a schedule rule, you query across multiple events and back in time, and you create alerts when the threshold is exceeded. You create an incidents and some options, and you can also trigger a playbook using alert trigger or incident trigger. Now, the same rule and the next interval can create a new incident for the alerts, or you can perform aggregation. So basically, you can add the alerts to an existing incident instead of creating new. So this is configurable through alert grouping options. Besides that, there is this alert per event configurations where each of the events can generate individual alerts. And at the same time, those individual alerts can generate individual incidents as well. Now, similar to what I mentioned earlier, you can configure aggregations or alert grouping by aggregating all these alerts into a single incident. Now, I talk about the raw events as the source, but you can also query the anomaly tables like what I mentioned earlier, and also your security alerts and security incidents table as well. Next, I'll pass over to Ron to talk about alert enrichment.
So when we are talking about alert enrichment, we are actually talking not about the detection part, but mostly focusing about how the incident will be investigated. Providing as much context as we can to the investigation will actually shorten the MTTR, or mean time to resolve. So we are aspiring to map as much information as we can when we're writing the detection to make sure that our investigation process will be as efficient as we can. So we have three parts in this feature. The first part is entity mapping. Most of you are probably familiar with the entities that we provide today. The idea here is to map everything as much as we can as entities, map those entities, add more identifiers to the entities, make them richer. And eventually when we'll have the investigation part, we can group by those entities or display them in the investigation graph, which will be extremely helpful. Whatever we couldn't map as entities, but we still would like to have information in the investigation process, we'll map as custom details, which are a key value pair bag that we are adding on to the alert and incidents eventually, that are extracted from the query during the alert creation time, and can be helpful to the investigation. So anything you find helpful to the investigation that doesn't fit to a specific entity can be mapped as custom details. While the alert details provide us the ability to make the alert as tailor-made to the events as we can. For example, taking the name and adapt it according to the events that we just saw in the query result. Especially helpful when we are talking about querying the security alerts table. We would like to have the original information from the alert that we queried on the alert that we are creating. And it really allows us to customize the alert and make it as rich as possible when we are creating a new detection. We can go and see the demo for now.
In this demo, we will configure alert enrichment on an existing analytic rule. First, let's go through the use case. This is an incident generated by the rule, successful logon from IP and failure from a different IP. It was generated as medium severity by default and has account and IP entity. We will be adding two types of enrichment to this rule. The first one is to surface additional information related to the user account entity, such as department, job title, and the reporting manager, by using custom details feature. This user information can be found in UEBA's identity info table, which we will perform correlation. The second enrichment is to customize the appearance of alert and incident generated by specifying parameters in Alert Details section. We will configure the rule to generate alert as high severity when the user account is found in the terminated employee watch list. The alert display name will also reflect this condition found. Now, let's start updating this rule by modifying the rule query. We will begin by adding the correlation with the identity info table. Since identity info table will sync every 14 days and changes to user profile are updated within 15 minutes, this block of query will get the latest user info. We will update the rule lookback period to cater the lookback requirement needed by identity info table, and at the same time, we will define the lookback period of the sign-in activity to 1 day in the query, matching the original logic. Next, we will add the query to get terminated employees watch list. After that, we will use the extend command to define a column for the severity value. The severity will be high if the user is found in the watch list. Otherwise, it will be medium. We will do the same for alert title by defining display name column with a customized title when the severity is high. Once we have done with updating the rule query, we need to update custom details and alert details sections. We will add user department, job title and manager to custom details section. Then, in Alert Details, we will select Alert Display and Severity columns that we define in the query. In addition, the custom details that we added can also be used for incident grouping. Save the modified rule and let's examine how would the incident look like after generated with the updated rule. This is a sample incident generated by the updated rule when an account is found in terminated employees watch list. The incident is now generated as high severity, and the SOC analyst will know that this incident found a match in the watch list just by looking at the incident title. Custom details containing additional user information have also surfaced in the incident pane. This will help to improve the investigation efficiency. This concludes the demo. Thank you.
All right, let's move on to the next topics in our agenda. Now, when we are dealing with security threats, time and speed are critical. We need to be aware of threats as they are materialized so that we can analyze and respond quickly to contain them. Microsoft Sentinel's near real-time analytics rules provide you faster threat detections by running your detection rule at 1 minute interval. Unlike regular schedule rules that query events based on time-generated fields, near real-time rules query events ingestion time field. This solves any ingestion delay problems and results in improvements of both frequency and accuracy in your detections. Near real-time rules have the same alert enrichment capabilities as schedule analytics rules, just like what you saw in the previous demo. However, alerts per event is not available, as near real-time rules produce a single alert that groups all the applicable events. I will also discuss other limitations in the next slides. But first, let's look at a quick demo for NRT rules. Now, this demo was recorded a while ago based on the customer's use case during the private preview of this feature. Let's check it out.
Hi, everyone. Today, we are going to cover our new analytics near real-time detections, or as we call them, the NRT detections. The goal for the NRT detections is to allow customers to detect and respond to a closed set of security scenarios. In order to demonstrate this feature, we will use an example that was contributed by one of our private preview participants. In our example, we would like to be notified on any account that gets deleted in our environment. We are sending mock safe data, or actually we are going to send some mock safe data into our Sentinel workspace that is going to have a unique device vendor name, which will be test60. We are going to create two rules to compare the regular scheduled rules and the NRT detections. One will be executed every 5 minutes, and we'll look back over the past 5 minutes. Both will have the same entity mapping, custom details, dynamic content settings. But for the NRT detections, we will not need to set any scheduling because the rule is going to get executed every 1 minute. Both will have the simulation abilities like we used to have before, and the query. To kick off the simulation, we'll start by sending the mock data. So we are going to log in into the generator VM. And we're going to send some messages to the collector. Let's see if we're getting the data. The TCP endpoint port. As you can see, we started receiving the data into the VM. That means that if we'll go into the log screen and let's do common security log take 10, we'll see that we are receiving some entries. Okay, and if we'll go to the incident page, after a while, after about 1 minute, we are going to start receiving some incidents. So let's wait for a few seconds. While we are waiting, let's understand what is happening right now. The NRT detections are going to be executed every 1 minute, looking back over the past 1 minute. And unlike the regular detections that we are having, they are going to ignore the time generated. So if we will create some delay in the pipeline, that will be ignored. That's a great feature because customers can now only think about the ingestion time of the entries and not look on the time generated at all. So that gives a lot of capability to do that detection on an ingestion time. And they're going to have almost a full parity with the capabilities that we are currently offering with the scheduled rules. We are not going to offer event grouping at the moment, but besides that, they're going to have all the entity mapping capabilities, all the dynamic content abilities, the custom details. So all of them will be available in the for the NRT detections. Let's go back to the rules and make sure that both are enabled. Yes. We'll wait a few more seconds for entities to arrive. Let's take a look and see if we are getting the alerts created. So should be getting incidents in a minute. Okay, even send some more data while we are waiting. There we go. And now we can see that we already got the NRT detection. It will take us up to an additional 5 minutes to get the scheduled ones, because each schedule rule is going to be executed every 5 minutes, and it's going to be delayed by 5 minutes. That's a built-in delay that we are having. Okay. So that opens a variety of use cases to our customers, and we are getting great feedbacks from our private preview. And if you have any additional questions, feel free to ask. Thank you all.
Right. Now, in terms of limitations of NRT rules, each Sentinel workspace can create up to 20 NRT rules at this time. This restriction is in place because this type of rule is new, and running a minute interval might create a significant amount of loads at our backend. However, we might increase it in the future. Besides that, the KQL syntax supported by NRT rules is currently limited, but will gradually evolve. Using union or joins operators are not allowed. However, the rule can refer to multiple watch lists and to the threat intelligence feeds as well. You cannot use KQL functions, but using asym is supported. Next, I'll hand it over to Ron to talk about detection tuning.
Great. So when we are talking about tuning, we're talking about the process of adapting the detections to your environment. Now, it's quite obvious that you need to do it when you're writing your custom detections, but actually you're quite to do so even when you're using out-of-the-box content. So it's actually taking a detection and adapting it to your environment. And since our environments are constantly changing, it means that the process never ends. And while talking to customers, it seems that almost 60% of the time when writing detection is actually invested in tuning the detection to the environment, which is an ongoing process, and eventually you need to tune it again because the environment has changed. Now that process is very delicate and continuous, and you need to make sure that you're not creating additional problems and missing those true positives along the way. And usually when we are talking about how the process goes is to find a common denominator between all those false positives that you get and to exclude them into the query, making it as tailor-made to your environment as possible. Now, a human being doing that task, it's quite hard, but we are leveraging the force of ML and AI and in data science to make it much, much easier and to provide insightful recommendations and actionable recommendations that will allow you to tune in one click. That's the idea. And that process of detection tuning never ends. We got the specific offering right now, but actually we are constantly investing in it, and we're trying to improve our tuning environment and expanding the tuning abilities. So right now we are focusing on entities, but future abilities will take a look on different properties on the alert and making the tuning process as automatic as possible. We are also providing some tuning insights, which are information about how the rule is behaving, how many incidents were closed in true positive or false positive over the last 14 days, or even the entity occurrence like you see in other platforms. And we are focusing on making all of our recommendation one-click applicable. So we want to make it as easy as possible to the tuning process. And our goal is we see it to make it even automatically, but that's a long way ahead. We can kick off with a demo. One short mention before is that we provide 3 tiles today that provide you the information. Like I said before, you can see it down here in the screen, marked in red. One of them is the incident classification, the other one was entity occurrence, and the last one is the recommendation based on entities. We'll introduce more and more as the time goes by, but let's start with the demo.
Creating a new detection consists of identifying the security vulnerability, writing the detection, and tuning it. This delicate and continuous process of balancing between making sure nothing important is missed and reducing false and benign results can consume up to 60% of the time. Microsoft Sentinel helps make this process as efficient as possible, reducing the time to tune and the false positives rate in the customer environment. This tuning process consists of excluding specific entities or properties from the result set of the query in order to remove false positives. In this demo, we will try to show how you can leverage the tuning recommendations in Sentinel. After you've connected your data sources to Sentinel, you'll want to be notified when something suspicious occurs. That's why Sentinel provides out-of-the-box built-in templates to help you create threat detection rules. Rule templates were designed by Microsoft's team of security experts and analysts based on known threats, common attack vectors, and suspicious activity escalation chains. Rules created from these templates will automatically search across your environment for any activity that looks suspicious. Many of the templates can, and should, be customized to search for activities, or filter them out, according to your needs. For example, we will take the Palo Alto, possible internal to external port scanning template. After an initial tuning process using the preview graph, we will create a rule from this template and let the rule run for a while in our environment. This rule will create incidents over time. The analyst will investigate the incidents and will label them. In our demo environment, we did exactly that. This will allow Sentinel to generate tuning recommendations which are generated once an hour. We can see that over the last 14 days, we had 27 incidents, 17 of them were true positives and 10 of them were false positives. We can render the preview graph to see the difference before and after the tuning process. Moving forward, what we just saw is the first step towards an automated tuning process. Over time, we plan to add more and more modules that will help in rule creation and tuning, and that will eventually result with a better MTTR and coverage.
So like I mentioned before, going forward, we are planning to add more and more tuning modules. Some of them, like I mentioned before, will be focusing about tuning, and some of them will be focusing about making the rule more efficient. So like I mentioned here in the slides, we are talking about covering benign positive too, looking on custom details, anomalies, and try to make the tuning process more customizable to those properties. Even cross properties, it's something that we are taking a deeper look into. We need to emphasize that each one of these new abilities is actually a new private preview and a test that we are going to make sure that we are providing insightful recommendations. We are eager to add more recommendations, but we are keeping in mind that providing better recommendations is even worse. So we are very careful when we are adding new recommendations for tuning, especially for this area. We will also like to have rule authoring recommendations to make your detection writing much more easy. One of them is entity mapping. We would like to make that process as automatic as possible. So as we see it, our goal is that you wouldn't need to map entities manually. Those will be automatically mapped by us, but you just need to approve it and move on. Another thing we would like to focus on is the ingestion delay problem, where you're getting a false perception of your coverage because you're thinking your rule is doing one thing, and actually because of the ingestion delay is doing another thing. So we would like to have recommendations to solve that problem, as well as performance recommendation, which is probably straightforward. We would also like to improve the recommendation experience that we have today. We would like to have a dismissible that we will be able even to learn from the things that you dismissed and what you prefer and what's not. that will help us making the recommendation experience as much as user-oriented as we can.
Right. Moving next is MITRE integration. The MITRE integration in Microsoft Sentinel is not just for analytics, but across Sentinel, such as rules, incidents, and hunting. Now, today we are aligned to MITRE version 9, but the priority updates will be in place. Now, some components such as hunting queries already have MITRE techniques since the beginning, but for analytics rule, the techniques was added at the later stage. We have backfilled them, the techniques for rule templates. That means if you have enabled rules from templates, they'll have techniques populated automatically. But if you have created any custom schedule rules in the past, you have to backfill them manually. We have introduced a new MITRE page, as you can see from the screen, to help you understand your organization's security coverage at any given time across all the components in Sentinel, such as active analytics rules, hunting queries, and rule templates, based on the tactics and techniques for the MITRE attack frameworks. Now, it also allows you to identify gaps in security coverage. For example, there might be specific techniques that the MITRE page identify as not covered, but you know that is relevant to your organization due to maybe a known targeted attacks, and you might want to add additional detections to improve the security coverage. Right, now let's look at a quick demo for the new MITRE page.
In this video, we are going to see a demo for the new MITRE blade. The purpose of this blade is to provide a clear image of the current security coverage to the Security Operations Center and how to improve it. MITRE is a globally accessible knowledge base of adversary tactics and techniques based on real-world observations. The attack knowledge base is used as a foundation for the development of specific threat models and methodologies in the private sector, in government, and in the cybersecurity product and service community. First, we will start by looking at the analytic rule. In each analytic rules there is a tactics and techniques field. You can choose from among categories of attacks by which to classify the rule. These are based on the tactics and techniques of the MITRE attack framework. The MITRE version we are supporting is version 9. After classifying all our rule, we can go into the MITRE blade to get the overall view of our security coverage. Each block represents a MITRE technique, and the number indicates on the number of detections we have on this technique. We can see that we have many gaps in our coverage, but let's take the drive-by compromise technique as an example. This technique is a part of the initial access tactic, and indicates that adversaries may gain access to a system through a user visiting a website over the normal course of browsing. We can see that we have no detection here. We will try to see how we can close this gap using the simulation ability. By clicking on Simulate, we can select Sentinel components that are not on and can be used to improve the security coverage. We will select the analytic rule templates and see how they affect the coverage. Now we can see that we have 3 templates that can improve our coverage. A customer who will select to enable this template will be able to improve their security coverage. This means that our Sentinel customers have a centralized place where they can understand their security coverage and know how to improve it. Our next phase will be to take into consideration the security products that the customer has connected and aggregate them into the view. That way we will have the real security coverage of the organization, and not just the Sentinel one.
Now we are going to focus on key ways to optimize your analytic rules, but we are actually going to mention it more like a guideline. So we walked over a bunch of features just now, but I think our main goal is to make the SOC more efficient, basically. So we'd like to help you make as much rules as you need and not as you can, use them in the right way. So use NRTs when the use case is right and not use them always. And usually when we have a new ability, we'd like to use it whenever we can, but actually detecting fast is not always the right thing to do. So there are cases where scheduling a rule and waiting for 50 minutes will be the right thing to do and not using an NRT for that case. When we are writing the detection, so we need to find the right tool to do that. When we are finding the right tool, we need to use and leverage the abilities that we are providing with it. So we talked about alert enrichment, we talked about the entity mapping, we talked about custom details, and of course the alert details that will allow us to create more detections in less rules, that like we saw on alert enrichment. And of course, we want to keep with the KQL best practices, so that will make our query more efficient, use grouping when we can to provide more context to the investigation and reduce noise to the SOC. We would like to tune it when we can to remove false positive and make sure that the SOC is actually focusing on what matters. We can use import-export to test rules, but actually we can create an architecture for testing that will use Trust Workspace. That way you can query production data on your dev workspace and test your detections in a different environment without any effect on your prod environment, which is very unique ability in Sentinel, which provides you the ability to test your rules. And you can use the repositories for version control to make sure that no one is changing your detections on production environment, and you can control all of it by GitHub. So we're providing a bunch of abilities that you can use to establish the pipeline that fits your organization in the best way, and to make sure that eventually you get the best coverage that you can with the lowest MTTR and the smallest false positive ratio that will allow you to respond and detect your true security incidents as fast as you can, helping our automation and all the abilities that we are providing.
All right. Thanks, Ron. So that's actually sums up our presentation for today. Thanks everyone for joining, and Jason, I'll hand it back to you.
Great, thank you. So we do have a few questions. The first is it possible to close alerts in the original MS product when the corresponding Sentinel incident is closed? If so, is it done through playbooks, or are there more universal solutions?
So usually when we're talking about closing open incidents, you're doing it by a playbook. When you're closing incident in Sentinel, those will remain open unless you establish a pipeline that will close the incident in Sentinel automatically. But if we want to the other direction, we need to close the incident in Sentinel, we'll have the ability to trigger a playbook to close the incident.
Gotcha, thank you. The next one is, what is the best way to manage alerts from all of the Defender products? If you suggest 365 Defender connector, the second question is, do I still integrate Defender endpoints and identity into Cloud Apps integration or keep separate?
So today the incident sync is with MTP, but eventually, since all of those products are going to be unified under the M365 Defender suite, the idea is that you'll be getting the incident into Sentinel, doing the investigation in Sentinel and on the M365 Defender, and the incidents will be synced together. So eventually we'll cut off those original data connectors, the standalone connectors, and get all the data from the Defender one, the M365 Defender one, and you get all of it from the same integration. So there are some steps along the way to be in that place, but that's the direction we're going towards.
Great, thank you. The next one, is it possible to tune original Microsoft Sentinel rules?
Yes, and we recommend it. Eventually, the rules that are created by Microsoft and providing in solutions are probably aligned to the environment where they were written in. And our recommendations are really solving that problem. So whenever you're getting a rule, you can let it run for a while in your dev environment, close the incidents and classify them, and then you'll get some insightful recommendations for us to close it. But yeah, we encourage you to tune the rules. Some of the rules are even asking you to configure them, asking to provide a watch list for the crown jewel organization, some suspicious ports. So you need to read the detection that we are providing whenever we are getting out-of-box content. Make sure that it aligns to your environment, do the customization that you would like and adaptation that you need. Let it run for a while, apply the recommendations on, and then it's good to go in your production environment. And as time goes by, the tuning process should continue. If your architecture change, you add more products, the organization is constantly changing and we need to adapt our rules accordingly.
Great, thank you. The next question is, with the M365 Defender connector running, can Sentinel match against the Sentinel Sticks/Taxi intelligence, or do we need to add the indicators to M365 Defender as well so it creates an incident to sync across?
So we need to take this one offline. I'm not sure about the answer, but we need to take it offline.
Okay. That seems to be all the questions we have. So with that, I'd like to thank Jeremy and Ron for being our guests today and for an excellent presentation. And thank you to the rest of the team who helped answer questions. At the same time, I would like to remind the listeners that the best way to ensure you don't miss any future webinars or major announcements is to visit our landing page at aka.ms/securitycommunity. And while there, you'll find easy ways to navigate and find the resources and learning content relevant to our security products and their communities. A good start would be browsing our bite-sized product videos, ninja trainings, recordings of past webinars, GitHub communities, and more. We love to hear your feedback on how we can improve these webinars. Please take a minute submitting your webinar feedback at aka.ms/security webinar feedback. Thank you and see you next time. Goodbye.